This is That One Audition with Alyshia Ochse.
I'm excited. I have to be honest. You are now like a screen queen and trying to watch Terrifier 3. I can see why people literally left the theaters. I'm gonna reverse engineer. Have you watched it? Because sometimes I've done a lot of horror films. I don't need to watch it. And then a couple I'll watch because the shooting of it versus the watching of it's always so different. Have you watched it in its entirety?
I have. I did a lot of festival circuits a few months ago, like all over, and it was really wonderful and such an invaluable experience. But I have watched it multiple times. I see the humor in it, and maybe it's because we know how the sausage is made, and I totally understand actors who don't want to watch horror films because especially horror films like this one in particular can be nauseating. So you don't necessarily want to watch that. But we all work very closely together. So I felt very comfortable watching it and knowing, okay, they use this for that and that for this. And I'm just in awe of the practical effects now. So it doesn't really bother me.
That's good. Exactly. The sausage being made. Like my daughter came and was on set for a film that I did. And she was like, when I'm watching them build the makeup, it's not that scary. But our agent won't watch it. He doesn't watch any horror films. So.
He doesn't. Like, he's sorry, Lauren, like, I support you, but I'm not watching it. You're so right. That's funny that he hasn't watched yours either. So, yeah.
No. The last 5 films that I've done have been in this vein, in the horror, psychological thriller vein. And he's, not for me, but love that you're doing this. Tell me about it. Tell me what happens. Okay. So that's where I wanted to start this because I've been doing this for 20 years. Last year, a year and a half ago, I told my agent, I want to focus on psychological thrillers and horrors because I want that Comic-Con money. I'm going to be I think you need to have a game plan as a business person. I have to put my daughter through high school here soon. So I want that. Was your plan starting off to go into this lane?
Wait, that's so funny because what a coincidence that you bring that up because I just got off the phone with my con rep and he was like, okay, these are the shows that want you this year. Which ones do you want to do? Which one? And some of them were Comic-Cons. And I was just like, it's just I'm still so humbled and thrilled that these organizations want me and people want me when I'm there. And you're absolutely right. It is a nice way to make a little bundle of cash on the side. But no, not necessarily. I've always been a horror fan. Not necessarily gory movies, like you said, like psychological thrillers I really enjoy. I don't know what it is about me, but I audition for these a lot. And just give this impression that I've gone through shit in my life. And I don't know, I've lived a pretty happy life. But I get this character very frequently, especially early in my career. I've done a lot of gory horror films early in my career that haven't even come out yet, that I've done years ago. And a lot of it you do for the paycheck and that are maybe coming out like this year or the next. And I'm like, oh, I didn't even know that was going to be shown, but okay, that's fine. So it's an interesting thing. But I find that now, as much as I love horror and I do want to continue to do horror, I'm trying to switch gears a bit and see if I can do something a bit different, or because I get a lot of offers now, they're very similar to Sienna, the role I play in Terrifier, which of course is a blessing that I'm even getting offers. But at the same time, I'm like, this will get boring. It'll get repetitive and boring, and I can't do this forever. And I want to be challenged. Any actor does.
Well, any actor does. Isn't it amazing that once you do one character, then of course they don't want to see you as anything else. So everybody wants to put money on what you've already done versus letting you stretch. But that's a specific conversation. So if you're willing to be open about your conversations with Tamar, are you guys actively saying no now to that lane that has given you so much? And what is the conversation to pivot? How are you guys actively trying to pivot? Because I do think as an actor, once you get to a certain level or you have a project that has certain level of exposure or relevancy, it's up to you to make the decisions on where your path goes. Before that, you're not really on a path, right? The industry and the audience you're taking everything. Absolutely, because you want to work. Yeah. Then all of a sudden you get a lot of heat put on your path. So how are you guys actively making a decision to either stay on that lane or pivot?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. And Tamer and I, as well as my entire team, my manager and the other people at the agency that I love and work very hard for me, we've had many conversations about this. And they'll always send an offer my way. Like they'll usually say, we know what the plan is, but we have to send it to you. Are you interested in this at all? And there have been a couple that might be in the vein of what I've done, but I'm like, well, the role is interesting. Like I actually do really like her. But then I have to like rehab that conversation. And Tamer is a wonderful advocate because he'll be like, remember, don't forget the goal. What's the goal? I know you really like this character, but do you want to stay in this forever? And it's sometimes it's very hard to pass, especially like when you come from an upbringing like myself. Like I was raised by a single mother who tried very hard and loved me to the fullest, but we didn't have a lot of money. So like now that I'm getting money, I'm like, I like this. I like making money. So to say no to the money and no to the work is hard because when you're an actor, you love the work and you hope to elevate any material that comes your way. But yeah, I've passed on a few handfuls of projects this year alone in 2025 in just the first 2 weeks. I even passed in an audition the other day because I was like, this isn't me. I can't. And the good thing about where I'm at right now is, and I was talking to one of my coaches about this, is now I feel that I have the freedom to pass on auditions where again at the beginning of your career you're taking anything you can get, you're just trying to put in the work, you're trying to like do it as an acting exercise. But now I'm realizing that, especially at these conventions, I meet like hundreds of people. I'm like, people care about my work now. Like people will follow what I've done. And I see it online too. I can't wait to see what you do next. And I'm like, now I feel like I have a responsibility to choose good work, like not just take whatever is thrown at me. So it's been a really hard year of passing on offers and trying to trust that. And it's really scary. You have to think of the bigger picture.
Okay, so what is the lane? What is the goal that you're focusing on right now?
The goal pretty much is to, first of all, attack different genres. And I am very lucky to get these offers. But what people don't understand, and I'll share a quick story with you. On the last film I worked on, one of the producers, I won't say who, he was wonderful. He looked at me and he loved working with me and I loved working with him. And he was like, Lauren, how's it feel to never have to audition again? I was like, excuse me? And he was like when this film comes out, you'll never have to audition again. This is incredible work. And I'm like, dude, what if I want to do a rom-com? Will this book me a rom-com? He's, what kind of rom-com do you want to do? I'm like, I understand that your intentions are coming from a good place and you're complimenting me, but that's just not the nature of the game. If I want to do something completely out of this, people have to see me in that light. It's not everybody in the industry has the imagination that us actors do. They can't see us in what we know we can do. So now the game is just to do something, to go for opposites, to like shoot for opposites as much as we can. And whatever that opposite is, like we still don't mind doing horror, but it's got to be so vastly different from what I've already done. It is a bit of a negotiation between us when we get these offers coming in, like we weigh the pros and cons. It's almost every offer becomes a conversation now. A short one and we get to it quickly, but it's definitely something we have to be mindful of.
I'm grateful that you're being so articulate about this because I think we don't, as actors, early on in our career or at any point in your career, we don't look at our team as just that. A team. We're all working towards, and in order for a team to advance, you have to have the same goal in mind. You're the person who places the goal. Yeah. You as the actor, you taking care of your business, and then you have good teammates that are going to stay in alignment with the goal. They know what the target is, right? So stuff that might come in, it might not be on the target, so then you can have the conversations about it. So that I think it's really invaluable every year, even if you're not at a relevant point right now. I like to use the words development and relevant differently than the industry does. Development meaning you're learning something. Relevant meaning you've mastered something. You have mastered a lane of the Scream Queen, right? Because Terrifier went so wide. The third one made over 90 million. Wow. Like you don't know which one's going to hit. Okay, so now you're relevant in that lane. You have to know how to still learn now other lanes that you want to explore because that's your goal. So I think having those communications, absolutely any actor, you can have that at the beginning of your career as well. Just know that you're in a development place, you're learning whatever lane that is. And I think it's good to lean into being typecast. I don't want to like, I'd rather be typecast than not cast. So many people have said that on the podcast, right? You and I look a certain way so people can project onto us what they think. Great. The lane of horror and psychological thriller really popped off for you. Fantastic. Now you've got this space to like exercise other elements of your instrument. So this is what I was so curious about. You're very similar to a friend of mine who's also a friend of the pod, Catherine Winnick. She comes from a martial artist background, and that served her so much to get Vikings. I'm curious where your martial arts background transitioned into acting and how that helped or didn't help. When did you allow that to be a part of your wheelhouse? Because that makes you so much more specific, right? Every actress can do every single skill set. No, you can't. Let's laser into what you actually can do. And that's what sets you apart.
Yeah, I really love how you put the question too, like when did you allow to make that? Because I did have a specific journey there. But I'll first go back to what you were saying about your team and how invaluable your team is. And I'm very fortunate to have a wonderful team. And I think actors should, in the beginning, especially early on in their career, to vocalize. And I think we're so scared to do it because we just want to work. Mm-hmm. And like sometimes even with their own team, they're scared they're going to get dropped. They're scared that they're just going to be thrown to the wayside. But I think if you're very specific and clear with what you want, the things will find you in this magical universe. It will somehow find you. And all you really got to do is voice it and just be brave. And I've found that over time. I should have practiced what I preach now, but I definitely have more confidence to speak very clearly to my team. And they're wonderful. And I'm very lucky. But moving on to the martial arts thing, I've been doing martial arts for going on 24 years now. And it was one thing when I started meeting with reps, and I of course have had multiple reps in the span of my career, that they would say, tell me something about yourself. And I'm like, yeah, I'm a black belt. I've been doing martial arts for this amount of time. I've studied multiple. It's my first love. I love martial arts. And now I want to be an actor. And this is what I want to do. And they were like, oh, that's great. We can use that. This is interesting and blah, blah, blah. And I remember the beginning of my career, and I don't know what Catherine's journey was like, but at the beginning of my career, I was like, no, I don't want to lean into this. I do not want to be known as the martial arts. There's millions of martial artist women that are trying to be also actors. And I want to see if I can do this. I want to see if I can be an actor. Like, so I wanted to brand myself as an actor who could do her own stunts. And I could do martial arts, that's there, but that's not the only aspect about me. I think I was so scared because my first reps, when I first started, they really wanted to lean into it. They're like, you got to make reels, you got to do this, you got to do that, like all these martial arts photo shoots. And I was happy to do it, but I started recoiling from that mindset because I was just like, I'm a successful martial artist and I've done this and I know I'm good at it. Now I want to know if I'm good at this thing that I've always wanted to do. And I want to get there by just being a good actor and not use, and maybe now, like looking back, I should have just used every resource at my disposal to get my foot in the door. And it did help me. Like a small co-star role on Iron Fist because it was like my first booking for a Netflix series and it was Marvel. So I was so excited, but I had a few lines, but then they were like, all right, let's see some of your martial arts. And I was
in the room because that was 2017. So yeah, you're still in the room. I love when they put you on the spot. They're like, special skills. Okay, let's see it.
Yeah, literally. It was so funny because in New York, they have the smallest little rooms for casting. It was just like teensy. And I was like, in this room right here? And they were like, yeah, just do what you can. And so I had to I did some 360 spins and like jumping kicks. And it's something I was confident with. And it was funny because I saw the difference between me reading the lines. And this was one of my first auditions. I was sweating. I was so scared. I was like, oh my God, I'm terrible. That's all I could think. And then they were like, all right, let's see some of your martial arts. And I snapped into it because I'm used to it. And I know that I'm good at it. And I was confident. And I'm sure that's what booked me that role. I'm sure.
Absolutely.
It was the confidence of that. And I was like, shit.
Gotta lean in.
No, you gotta lean in, but I didn't want to depend on it. And that was my thought process early in my career. I wanted to be validated as an actor, not as a martial artist who whatever. And that's great. And it's something I'm proud of, but I just wanted to separate the two and see what happens. Since then, and admittedly, I've always wanted to do martial arts films. So I don't know why I compartmentalized it like that. I watched Rush Hour growing up. It was one of my favorite movies. And I was like, this is the kind of film I want to do. But I wanted to first establish myself as an actor.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to use my martial arts when I felt that those types of roles were going to be offered to me or whatever. So it wasn't an immediate, let's use this. It was, yeah.
That's so interesting. Well, but I think that's also, I think when you just start off, you want to be so validated as that you resist the obvious bookings for you or the obvious role placement. I did the same thing in a different way where I was like, no, I don't want to be that girl. I don't want to be the girlfriend. I don't want to be the bear girl. I don't want to do this because I want you to just really value my acting. It took 10 years before I got an audition that really valued me as an actor. True Detective, literally like 9 years in before I actually got to act. Still in the lane of a whore, a lot lizard. But that's what people would look at my headshot. That's what they would think. That was the easy casting. I didn't work as much the first 5-6 years that I was in resistance to the typecast. So I find it really interesting that you also were in resistance to something that I think really set you apart. And now but you know what? You got exactly what you wanted. Let's talk about the acting part of it. I know you did so many shorts, which was great. You got to really diversify. I think starting off, that's the best way to do it. You get to work with so many different directors, writers. But I would love to hear your thoughts when Tamer sent you Terrifier 2, because it's, well, not the first one, it's the second one. It's during COVID. During COVID times, yes. So you have to make a tape. So I want to hear this audition, start to finish, what you're willing to share on how you did this audition that then takes us into 3, because you didn't have to audition for 3.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, you're set.
I actually wasn't with Tamer yet. I was with a different agent at this point. I actually auditioned for Terrifier 2 in 2019. So it was like right before the pandemic, like literally right before. I think it was August of 2019 where I got my first audition for it. And when I got it, I hadn't seen the first Terrifier. And it was only because I didn't have the time to. Like even 2 days ago, and this is why we went on strike, right? I got 2 days to work 3 scenes, 8 pages. And I was like, and this is one of my first auditions of the year. And I was just like, oh my God, this is so much. Like, how do we do this as actors? I love actors so much. And I don't know how we're able to get off books so quickly. And so much is expected of us. And I feel like most people don't realize how much work goes into one audition, but that can be a conversation for later. And this was one of those times. Like I got a few scenes. I did not have time to watch because we have lives as actors. We can't just stop, most of the time, stop what we're doing. Most of us are working actors and like we have other jobs and stuff. I just didn't have time to watch the first one. So I read the scenes and I was like, okay, this is a family drama. So I approached it like that. And I was told it was a horror film with a cult following, and I didn't really try to let that affect me. I was like, I don't want to know that. That's not important to me. What's important to me is the connection with the characters here. And I auditioned, and I got a call back, but it actually was on tape, which was interesting. We actually did put it on tape. I don't know why, even though it was pre-pandemic, that was on tape. Then I taped again, and then had to go in for a chemistry read. And in New York, in person. And I arrived, and when I arrived to New York, I felt very confident. I don't know why. I think because I just knew the tapes were good. And I usually don't like to do this, but I started like chatting with one of the actresses that was in the room because I could tell that she was nervous. And I don't know, I just felt, because I don't like to think of it as like a competition. Like I know a lot of actors do and they thrive off of that, but I hate that. I hate being in competition with people because I really do believe that the right roles will find you. And there is a level of scarcity now, but you could post like pandemic, post strike, now the fires, it's just a weird time, but like I never like to think of it that way. So I'm chatting with this actress and she's like nervous out of her wits. And then Damien comes in, who's the writer director. And he's so unassuming because he's like wearing a cap. He's just like a really normal looking like Staten Island guy. And I'm just like, oh, this guy must be auditioning. Like I didn't know who he was. And so and he has a bag and we're waiting for the door to open. We're right outside waiting for like the casting door to open. It must have been locked. And I'm like shooting the shit with Damien. I'm like cracking jokes. And he's like, oh, what are you here for? And or no, I forget how this conversation, he must have known I was there for a reason. But I think I just brought up, I was like, yeah, I have this audition for this horror film. I don't know much about it. Like I was just like saying. Like, I'm excited. It's cool. Like, it'll be fun. And we had already made a rapport. And then I was like, oh, what are you here for? And he was like, oh, yeah, I'm the writer, director. And I was like, oh, shit. I had no idea. Because I didn't like Google. Again, I didn't have time most of the time to like Google like who had created it. And I just already felt very friendly with him. And when I was in the room, even though they were like high intense emotional scenes, I just felt at ease. And maybe it was just because he has that aura. And yeah, I booked it that day. He told me that day. He was like, oh, you got the role if you want it. And I didn't even consult with, because that never happened to me before. So I didn't consult with my agent at the time. I was just like, oh, yeah, sure, I'll take it. That sounds great. I didn't think. And then when I called my agent, I was like, oh, I got the role. And he was like, what do you mean you got it? I was like, he offered it to me and I accepted. He was like, you don't accept without looking at the contract. And I was like, oh, whatever. I just want to work. Who cares? And we started filming that October, and that was, gosh, it's 5.5 years ago. Yeah.
That's what's so crazy, right? And that's the thing. Tamer and I were joking around and talking about this when Terrifier 3 came out, which ended up being a colossal hit. I love it came out the same weekend as Joker Bombs. It's a perfect storm of goodness. The third one, not the second one. The second one also does so well, obviously, in order for the third one to happen. But you just never know with these projects, right? You go in and you're like, oh, whatever, I'm just going to do this one thing. But then when you're going in for Marvel, you're like, I need to get this job. I'm so precious about it. It's Marvel. It's
Yeah.
interesting how we give different projects different weight according to results. But that's what I wanted to dig in with for those scenes, the audition scenes for Terrifier 2, or even on the day of the shooting. You have really high intense emotional scenes. A lot of actors, especially if you're going into the room, freeze up on that demand when it's girl breaks down crying here. It's always for the actresses too, right? Never the actor where it's like hysterically crying in the middle of the scene.
Yeah.
How do you address those? And I know you were cool and collected, but I'm curious your preparation for stuff in that vein.
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. And that's such an interesting observation. And I guess it's one that I hadn't really mulled over for long. It is true that it's always women that are in hysterics. Most of the time in real life, the women in my life are some of the calmest, like during, anyway, but that's again a conversation for another day.
Written by man, written by man. And also, I think when it's written there, I always think that's for the reader. When you're
Yes.
reading it, you want to see the emotionality of the scene. I take the pressure off me, but that took me 15 years to come to that conclusion. Where at the beginning of my career, I'm like, she breaks down crying right here? Okay. What do I do? Until I figured out how to have a different technique and tool to bring me. So I'm curious what your technique and tool.
You are absolutely right. And that took me time as well. Like I, again, was so precious about the stage direction when I first started. I was precious about the lines too. I thought everything needed to be verbatim. Like I was very obsessive about it until one day I was with like one of I have two coaches who are incredible. And the one was like, it's a guideline. You don't need to do it perfectly. Not every script is written by Aaron Sorkin. Like you don't need to like do it perfectly. And sometimes it helps to play the opposites. And I've done that because so many people, if that's written down, and again, I don't like to think of it as a competition, but that's written, so many actors are going to hold on to that and they're going to try to do that. And it might not always be truthful. So sometimes you want to set yourself apart and try to play the opposite, try to do something completely different. And that's something I've worked on a lot. But in terms of emotionality for me, I don't know why. I have a lot easier time with it than like just a regular conversation. I don't know why. I actually feel more confident going into a scene knowing that it's going to be heightened circumstances. And of course, all film, you can make an argument that it is always heightened, but really extreme emotions come very easily to me. And I don't know why. I truly don't know. I do a lot of preparation. I write out I learned this from not Anthony Hopkins, from I think Christopher Walken. I think Christopher Walken, he writes out his lines with no punctuation. And I was like, I'm going to do that. And I started doing it. And of course, it got me out of trying to do it exactly how it's written on the page. I make it my own. But of course, I write down notes and I'm trying to decide how I like to do it. It doesn't always work with me, but I try to attribute moments in my life that are similar to what this character is going through and try to like inject it in that moment. So if I have a high intense emotional scene, I'll try to like take something that happened that was very emotional in my life, and it just comes naturally to me. I know that's a cop-out answer, but it's one thing I'm very comfortable with. But if I'm having a conversation with an actor, I sometimes get in my head about that because I'm like, how can I make this interesting? You feel like you have to do something when you don't always have to do something. Sometimes you just need to let the script do its job. And usually if it's well written, it will.
Yeah, no, I think that's a very good tangible technique. I would say that when you remove punctuation, like Christopher Walken, I've done that a couple of times for very emotional scenes that are like 6 to 8 pages long, which who does that? It's excessive. But taking out the punctuation, right? Then we're not playing at a result. Then we're allowing it to flow. I love that as a tool. And is that what you did for Terrifier? Who are the coaches that you work with? The two?
Yeah, so I work with Brian Fox, and he's in Wayne, Pennsylvania. And I only do Zoom now, it sucks because I do miss being in person. And maybe I'll try to, it's just very hard. And I also work with Eric Reese, and he was all over the place. I think he's moving back to New York now, so I might try to see him in person. But I work with those two coaches, and they both have such different approaches that, like, Brian, he's very gentle, and I've been working with him for years, and he understands me, so I'm very comfortable with him. Whereas Eric, it's very funny because we lost David Lynch yesterday, and it's such a loss. And I posted a photo of him saying, okay, let's do it again, this time good. And that's very much my other coach, Eric's mentality. Like, he will tell me, like, if I suck. And sometimes I need that too. Sometimes I need a coach that's just like, all right, what the fuck are you doing? Let's do it again. And it's so nice to have both of them because I get something very different from both of them. I forget where we were going with that.
No, I think I was curious who you're working with, and then if they were working with you on Terrifier 2 when you went in the room, or if that was just your casualness of just, yeah, I'm just going to go play and just see what happens, especially since your wheelhouse vulnerability is something that bubbles up for you so well. So then let's flip it. You've also done the rom-com Hallmarky kind of type of movie. And I think you got that audition on Terrifier. Did I read that correctly? You start Terrifier day first week, and now here comes a romantic comedy.
Yeah.
Since you said conversational pieces are a little bit more challenging, what technique did you use for that audition? Or was it just because you were so distracted somewhere else, you could just laser in on what the text was?
I think there's some truth in that, honestly. It's really such a weird mind fuck we sometimes have to do to ourselves. But Brian Fox, he's the acting coach that I worked with for both Terrifier and, gosh, what was the name of that film? A Taste of Christmas. And I actually, yes, I remember being on set my first day of Terrifier 2 and getting that email and panicking because I knew that I would be on set. And truthfully, for Terrifier 2, we were on set for criminally long hours. Yeah, like some days were like 20, we were on set for 24 hours some day. Yeah, it was union, by the way. So yeah, that did happen. And so we were on set, and it was also in Italian. And I do speak Italian.
I was yes.
And I love that. And it's something, again, it's in my wheelhouse, but it's my second language. And it's a language that I learned while I was in college. So it's not a language I lived with my whole life. It still feels new for me. So I remember being on set, trying to prepare for my scenes for the day. I was prepared, trying to get in that headspace. Whereas whenever I felt that I had time, I would look at my scenes and try to run them with someone. I think maybe my husband was on set that day, so I'd try to run it with him. And luckily, he speaks Italian as well. So like we could work on it together. And a few days after that, I went in at the acting my coach's studio. And it's funny because like he doesn't speak Italian, so I had to give him the lowdown of what I was doing and what was happening. And I think because there is this energy when you're already working that I usually book the most when I'm auditioning when I'm already on another job because there's no more desperation. And I do think that certain cast, or maybe every casting director, can smell that. Because actors, they hold on so tightly and they want every job or certain jobs they want so bad. And truthfully, like the jobs that like I put less work in and again, didn't treat it so preciously, those were the jobs that I booked because there wasn't this like pressure again put on me. And I think again, because I was working and I wasn't like so hyper focused on just booking something else, I got it. And I had to go back and forth between Georgia and New York to film both of those simultaneously.
The TV and film landscape, it's constantly changing, but traditional actor training has largely remained the same.
It's focused on a theater model whose main goal is to help you stretch the expression of your instrument. That's why you can have years of training,
From scene study classes to audition classes.
to even an MFA, and still not be able to book a 2-line co-star.
That's why we created the Bridge for Actors.
A collection of tech, craft, and business online courses to teach you the skills that you need to go from a student of acting
To a working actor.
I gotta love when you're jumping. What's nice when they're so polar opposites too, because it helps you slide into one and then the other. I want to ask about stamina and recovery, because I don't think a lot of actors talk about this, especially in the lane of, since vulnerability is so present for you in your instrument. When you shoot for 24 hours, though, I don't care what anybody says, then you have to turn around and do it again the next day and 24 hours later. What's your recovery process?
Yeah, it's so interesting. I think I'm still discovering it. So even in Terrifier 3, we had this intimacy coordinator on set, Maria. She was incredible. And I was doing a lot of high intense emotional scenes. And I started to notice that I started to smell because I was sweating. I was sweating a lot because my body was just reacting to how I was feeling emotionally. And I went up to Maria and I was like, I'm so sorry. I feel like I smell. I didn't bring my perfume today and blah, blah, blah. And I just didn't think ahead. And she was like, I could teach you some breathing exercises for that, because your body, you know that you're acting, but your body doesn't. So your body's reacting to what you're putting yourself through. So I think for me, again, I'm still discovering it, but it's like finding the right breath and just trying to disassociate afterwards. I try to leave it on set and focus on the next day. So I might go home and watch, or back to the hotel in most cases, watch a comedy show that I like, just to decompress or speak to a loved one. Yeah, I'm still trying to figure it out.
I'm glad that you're honest, because I do think that's a big part of our career our job that nobody really talks about, especially when you're coming off that high demand, is having a recovery process set in for you, because if not, we could do a lot of damage. Sarah Drew has a beautiful episode. She talked about being on Grey's Anatomy and she was actually pregnant. And in the scene, she loses her baby and she went into early labor, because our bodies don't know the difference. If we're doing a beautiful job of really being of service to the story, your body is following suit to what your brain's putting it through. So I think that's a huge, huge component of something that we have to learn. So yeah, breath work. Okay, so talk to me about stamina. You're the lead. The whole thing is around you. I have a great course called You Booked It Now What? Part 2, how to lead a film. Truly how to take yourself moment to moment, scene to scene. Talk to me about your stamina practice, because I love that you are doing all these shorts and you are getting one-offs here and there on television. Now, Terrifier 2, Terrifier 3, it's all on you. Yeah. It is. So what techniques did you learn between 2 and 3 to help you with the stamina part?
That's so interesting. And I don't know if it has something to do with the fact that I was a trained and competitive martial artist my whole life. I think there is an element to that prepared me for this. And I think anybody that has done a sport or something similar and then finds the avenue into acting might have a similar story to this, because it is absolutely true. I remember my first acting class ever was in college. It was just a one-off prerequisite. I didn't think that acting was in my field of view. I didn't think I would ever be able to even go for it. My acting coach, she was so cool and she was young and she had all this energy. And one of the things she said was, if you want to be an actor, you have, and she didn't say stamina, but it was along that vein. She was like, you need to be in shape. And I don't think she meant you need to have a six-pack. You just need to have energy and you need to constantly find energy. I do work out and I do think that does help. But I think a lot of it, and I think this is also why I'm hoping to do a rom-com next, because something like this is exhausting. It's truly mentally and physically exhausting. I love the work so much that even though I am like at the brink of exhaustion, I'll keep going. And it's funny because even on this last film that I worked on, I can't get into the specifics because it's not out yet. I was doing a stunt because, again, I like to do my own stunts, and a padlock, a real padlock, during the scene, the beginning of the scene, hit me on my eyebrow. And I felt it and I was like, shit, this hurt. And I continued with the scene. And I was working with Jaimin Hanzu, who's incredible, 2-time Oscar nominated actor. And I just was like in the scene with him. And then after the scene was finished, I look at Jaimin and I'm like, Jaimin, am I bleeding? And he was like, it's real? Like, it's real blood? Because I had like blood on me, like fake blood. And the director comes over, Darren, and he's just like, do you have a concussion? Like, we need to stop. And I was like, it's already there. Let's just keep going. And I don't recommend this. I don't recommend this practice, but it's because I love the work so much that the adrenaline of it all, it keeps me going. So I don't necessarily think I have a practice set in place. I think I just am so obsessively in love with this job that no matter what happens, I want to keep going. I'm like, no, this is what I've wanted my whole life. Why would I stop now? So, yeah.
No, I think that's exactly it. When you're that high, it's the adrenaline surge, right? Like when I get home, even if it's after a 14-hour day, I'm up. Up. We got to do the thing that we love to do. It's just learning how to harness that with the recovery and trying to do that. Okay, I know this job with Jamin, that was the offer, right?
Was an offer.
Was an offer. And I know that it's like your main, I would say, big offer after Terrifier 3. There's 2 different sets of ways of thinking about this. And I think this is so helpful for actors. When you get an offer, that first day on set is like your audition. I'm so curious how you approached, because it's not Terrifier, it's not with Damon, it's not like somebody you're already comfortable with knowing, okay, I'm going in and doing the sequel now.
Yeah.
What was your preparation and day one? I want to know how day one went.
Yeah, that's such a great question because you're absolutely right. I've gotten offers and I've worked on like low budget stuff off of offers, but a lot of the offers I passed on, and this was one I was very excited about. And again, working with Jaimin, he wasn't there my first day on set, but like I was working with these other wonderful actors, and of course Darren, the director, I was a fan of. And I was working with both of my acting coaches and 2 dialect coaches. I can't say why, but like I was working with multiple professionals for this. And I was working with one of my coaches, it was Eric, and it was over Zoom. And I was so precious again about it. I hadn't been on set yet. And he was like, you need to relax. Like you are holding on to this too tightly. You got the job. Like you don't need to prove yourself to anybody. You just got to play. And it was such a nice realization. And he gave me the permission to do it. So I had to give myself the permission to do it because I was like so in my head about it, very actory. And I had done so much prep, and I am that kind of person that I need to do a lot of prep, a lot of note taking, a lot of scene work so that when I get on set, I can let go of it and let what happens happen and be spontaneous and in the moment. And every day was incredible. Like I truly, to the point where, and I got validation from the people on set, not that I needed it, but it truly helped me get through. I was also working with Neil McDonough, who I'm a huge fan of. And if you ever look in his eyes, he has like the most piercing blue eyes. And I did a scene with him. It was a short scene in this film. And I wasn't on camera, it was his coverage. But I love actors and I love my job so much that I give my all to every actor, even when I'm off camera. It's just something that I do. And so he was doing his coverage, and then he wrapped, and then he comes up to me and he hugs me. He's, Lauren, I got to tell you, it was one of my favorite moments ever in my career. He was like, I got to tell you, I can't wait till we can actually work together, like actually have something with a lot, because even though you weren't on screen, you were giving me your all each time. Your eyes were welling up, like you were just giving me your all. And he was like, that's an actor. And he didn't say, what an incredible performance. He didn't say, oh my God. He was just like, that's an actor. And that was the validation I needed. Yeah. I'm an actor. I'm not just someone who shows up on screen and screams at the top of my lungs and runs around with floppy tits. I don't do that. I prepare Because I think being a screen queen, there are like, even though I'm so happy that people recognize me, there are like some connotations that come with that. Like
Absolutely.
you just assume a horror actress can't act or whatever. So it's an interesting thing to kind of balance, to be grateful for what you have, but also remind people like, no, I'm an actor who puts in the work. And I had that realization every day when I was on set, when I got validation from my peers. And I was so excited and enthralled. And yeah, I'm really excited for people.
I'm excited for this one. I am. I'm really excited for you. That I feel like that kind of anchors this whole interview, right? For you at the beginning and also your career. At the beginning to say, I'm not a martial artist, I am an actor.
Yeah.
And I love that the moment that's the most treasured after shooting is not even something where you're on camera. An actor is somebody who connects in the ethers with somebody else, who evokes a feeling, who entertains. And you evoked a feeling from another actor who's been doing it 40 plus years, right? So that is nice to play. It's nice to play with another person who really truly wants to be there on set. And you're just getting started. Like there's so much still that is around the corner, for sure. I'm going to ask one hard question. We could possibly leave this in or cut this out.
Yeah.
I think it's a good business question. And then we're going to get into some fun questions. When a movie hits, like Terrifier 3 did, especially at box office, all of a sudden people are looking at the box office over the weekend. You're like, what's this Terrifier 3 that just made 25 million, 26 million in opening weekend?
Yeah.
Now the industry comes a knockin', and that could really disrupt the team. It could really be advantageous to go somewhere else. I'm making an assumption that CAA, ICM, UTA, some probably big people that saw those numbers are like, who's Lauren? Oh my gosh, I can make money off of her now.
Yeah.
There's vultures. I'll call them vultures. So I'll say it. You're not saying it.
Yeah.
I'm curious what your thought pattern is to remain where you are and continue to make the choices that you want to make. What's the business decision as an actor? Some actors will not get to this place and some people will. And I think it's invaluable to see how another person makes a business decision about where they're navigating the rest of their career.
You know what? Being an actor is such an interesting job because you really truly have to find the balance between the artistry and the business of it. Do I think that I have found that balance yet? No, I think I consider myself like an artist, and that's where I feel like I thrive. And I do have business savvy, but it's not something I like to care about. It's just there, and I know I have to address it. In terms of my team, and I've had different team members over my life, I find that I tend to get very loyal with them, especially when they understand me.
Yes.
And even before my current team, I had a wonderful local boutique agency that I loved. And my manager, who I love, she was like, listen, I think you're going to have, and this was after Terrifier 2. She was like, you're going to have these people that want to see you. I think you should address that. And I think you should, meet these people. And I was like, but I love my team. And like, they're amazing and blah, blah, blah. And she was like, you have stepped up and now you have to. Yes, you need to like have other aspects of your career step up with you. And I was just like, okay. So I did have like meetings with a lot of the big agencies and stuff. And like then CESD came and I fell in love with Tamer and Danielle, and they're like my two like main agents. They all work together there. And I just love them so much, and they get me. And I think that's what I think that's what all an actor can hope for. Like you can see their drive, they see your drive, and I'm just very happy where I'm at right now. And why would I change that? But so I don't know.
But sometimes that can be an interesting part of the business that not a lot of people talk about, and that you're the first person in a while that I could see would have that crossroads. And you're like, wait, hold on. What? And from a movie that you may or may not thought when you auditioned for Terrifier 2, that this would be the movie that gives you relevancy across continents, essentially, like box office. And now you get to make different choices. I love this. This is great. Okay. Ready for some fun questions?
Do it.
Weirdest place you've ever auditioned?
Weirdest place I've ever auditioned. Oh my God, I'm trying to think. Because I started acting in 2017, and then 2 years after that, everything moved to self-taping. So I feel like I have been in the room, but not that frequent. I feel like I've done mainly self-tapes. Hardest place I've ever auditioned. I feel like I've auditioned at a warehouse for like this. I think I did. And I remember it being sketchy, and my husband was with me, and I was just like, stay outside. And it never turned into anything. This was like very early in my career. So I've definitely done some things like that. I can tell you an audition that like stands out to me.
Yes.
And it wasn't a weird place. It was at a college. It was my very first audition ever. And it was before I had like really delved in with acting classes. I was just like, let me see if I can do this. And I was like, okay, I know my lines. I'm ready to go. And it was just for a student film. And I go in, and they were like college students. They were really nice. They're like, okay, whenever you're ready. And I couldn't remember any of the lines. I was just like, and I was like, sorry, I don't know what had happened. And they were like, it's okay. I'm very understanding. It's okay. Take your time. Go again. And I was just like, I'm sorry, I can't do this. And I just left. And then I got in the car with my husband, and I was like, all right, I need to take acting lessons. If I want to pursue this, I can't just, you hear these stories of actors that are just like show up to an audition and they get it. It's ridiculous. And I'm like, no, this is going to be years in the making. And if I want to do this, I have to commit. And I really committed and took acting classes, and
and now we're here. And now we're in a totally different place. It's good. Isn't it that fight or flight? You're like, wait a second, I'm fleeing now. I've left my body. Okay.
Yeah.
What's the most ridiculous thing you've been asked to do in an audition?
I did have this one scenario where I can't remember. It was like a stunt coordinator's audition. Again, like I started acting, and then I was like, I can do stunts. Let me see if I can make money on the side doing that. And they also wanted to see if I could say a few lines just in case. I forget. It was weird, like nothing I'd ever done before. And they said, oh, I see that you have like Cockney on your resume. Can you say the lines in Cockney? I was like, why? That doesn't serve the material at all. It just felt like a power flex. I can't remember who that person was, or it never turned into anything, but I was just like, I don't really think it serves the material. I remember doing it because I was asked to. I like took a moment and I was like, all right, I'll do it. But it just rubbed me the wrong way. I was like, I felt like a performance monkey. I just didn't like it. I remember feeling, what the heck is this? And yes, that will happen sometimes. But if it was a different role, different circumstance, I would be like, absolutely. If Spielberg was like, hey, I'll be like, absolutely, I can. But this was just like such a weird, like stunt coordinator thing. It was weird.
That's hilarious. I also feel like they're always like looking at special skills, being like, yep, I'd love to see you do that right now. You're like, what? Okay. The test.
I need to warm up a bit. Give me a second. I can't just throw out a kick. Let me go stretch for a second. It's so bizarre.
Yeah. Okay. Even though you are very much in this lane, what do you actually enjoy watching?
Oh, I do actually really enjoy watching psychological horror films. It's something I really enjoy. I also really love comedies. I tend to watch the same stuff I've seen throughout my life. Like one of my main inspirations to become an actor was Lucille Ball. I love her, and I Love Lucy is one of my favorite shows of all time. I think she was a pioneer in a lot of ways, and I'll rewatch that constantly, and it's timeless. And I learn something new from her every single time. And I am a creature of comfort, so I tend to watch the same things over and over.
We need to see you in a comedy. That's what you need to do now. I'm just going to tell Tamar, okay? We need to see some comedy. I'm just going to let them know.
Listen, yeah, I agree.
Okay, so this is a tricky question, because what's the one thing you've done that you wish no one would see?
Oh my God, a lot. I don't know if I should say.
I was just going to say, I don't want you to say it because I don't want to bring attention to it. But this is a funny question that pops up. People ask.
So many, some that have come out recently and some that have yet to come out. Again, like in the beginning of your career, you do things for a paycheck and you just take what you can get. And you don't want to be defined as that. You're just like, listen, I did this for a week. I needed the money. You want to do your work. Obviously, you want to flex that muscle, but it wasn't necessarily the best, whatever experience. But I won't say what they are, but a lot of them.
That's the thing that I think is so difficult about film. So anybody that's also listening, whether you're an actor or not an actor, it's one of those things, if they're going to pull out movies that you did 3, 4 years ago, if I served you dinner from 3 weeks ago, it's not going to be that tasty, right? It's lost its potency. I've learned how to season it differently. Like we've evolved as artists. You don't necessarily want to be stuck back there. Also, I wish there was a ticker before every movie that was like, we made this movie in 3 days. Like we did 27 pages of sides today versus the blockbusters that have 6 months. I wish you could be judged by how the sausage was made sometimes versus the end product.
But I'm also at this like weird point where like I've done films years ago that haven't come out yet because they didn't have the funding or whatever. And now that people know me, they're using my name as, oh, this is now she's done this. Now watch this. And I'm like, I did that years ago. I know it hasn't come out yet. You probably think it's like something I just did, but
Relevant. I know.
What I'm doing now. So it's interesting. It's a weird journey. Yeah.
It is. It is. But it's good. We get to put it out here so that people know, because we don't get to see like Tom Hanks's first 2 years of his work. That stuff's gone. It's disappeared. Now everything's just a little bit easier to repurpose or put out. What role do you wish you could steal right now that is currently out? Yes.
That's currently out? Oh my God. See, I don't know. That's so hard because I am such an actor. I love actors. So if I say a role that I love, it's because of that actor that did it.
Yep.
It's weird. I don't know if I could. I will say, but I won't say what. I did audition for a few things last year that are coming out next year. And I'm sure those actresses got offers. I'm sure they probably saw my audition. I was like, all right, she's fine, but we're going to offer it to this actor, which is fine. That's the nature of the game. And so I see that it's coming out next year and I'm like, oh, I really wanted that role. I'm sure they're going to crush it, but I won't say what it is. But that happens to me a lot. I will audition for something and I don't get it and it comes out and I'm like, it's a bit of a gut punch, but it's part of the journey that you're not going to get everything. And it was a wonderful, beautiful acting exercise. Hopefully you learned something from it and hopefully you grew from it, really.
Yeah, we always do. But it's always fun to hear where you're like, oh, Brad Pitt was supposed to be in that. And then so-and-so did it instead. The evolution, especially of film, you and I work in film a lot. It can very much be a completely different film with different people in it. And I really like seeing other actors' takes because I'm like, oh, I didn't get it. What did they do? Or how do I see them? And then sometimes I can just cast other people in it. I read it and I'm like, oh, great. Lauren's going to be great at this. I don't even need to audition. I'll tell Tamer sometimes. I'm like, I don't need to audition. My friend so-and-so is going to get it. Like you can start reading and understand I'd like to see somebody else's take on it, right? Like my friend so-and-so, I'd love to see what she do with this material. As an actor, right?
Sometimes you just know that you might not be in service of the material like someone else might be, just because they would probably have a better understanding of it. And that I think that's a very freeing thing to understand. Like even again, now I pass on auditions now and I'm like, this isn't for me. Like I know this isn't for me. I'm not going to be in service of this material. It doesn't resonate with me. So there's definitely truth in that.
So the monster. When is the monster coming out?
The monster, I'm not entirely sure. It's so interesting because last week I was reaching out to my LA people because I'm East Coast based and Darren, the director, is one of them. And I was like, hey, how are you? Are you okay? Like safe from the fires? And he was just like, oh yeah, the fire's 3 miles away. I'm editing right now. I'm packed and I'm ready to evacuate. I'm like, 3 miles away and you're editing? And he's just like, oh yeah, I was like, dude, I am in like the East Coast and I'm worried for you. How are you focusing on this right now? So I know that he's editing it and I know that because he asked me to do some quick ADR plugin lines because he wants to show it to some of the producers. I'm hoping that they're hoping for in Halloween, but I really truly don't know. I know that Paramount has already picked it up and that's wonderful. But I really, truly have no idea. Hopefully the end.
How about this? What can you tell me about it without giving up too much?
Yes. Yeah, I'll do my best. I never really know what I'm supposed to or can say. Yeah, so it's about these 2 millennial con artists. They rent out Airbnbs and they con people into thinking that they own the Airbnbs so they can steal money from the people that they pretend they're renting it out to. A bit convoluted. And then they end up doing it to the wrong person. And so that's really all I can say. So there is a
That's
bit
great. That's all we need.
yeah,
Yep.
there's a bit
That's all we need.
but I'm very excited for it. There are like 3 distinct parts. It really truly feels like 3 different movies. So I'm really excited to see the progression and how people receive it.
I think it's going to be great. Also, everybody that watched Terrifier 3 is going to be anxiously awaiting to see what you do next. And I'm excited that this is it. Where can everybody find you and follow along with everything coming out? Socials, and then do you have any cons coming up?
Oh my gosh, yeah. I should have brought my notebook in here because I wrote down like all the cons that I'm potentially doing this year. I'm doing a couple Galaxy cons, and I'm doing Monster Mania in Cherry Hill and also in Maryland, so East Coast. But I'm going all over this year. I wish I could say. I think I'm going to be in Pittsburgh for a con at the end of February. Gosh, I don't even remember. I have a good amount of cons coming up, and I think I will try to post them on my social media. I'm most active on my Instagram at Lauren LaVera. It's simple, the one with the blue check. And that's really where I'm active the most. So I think you can find me there.
Yeah. And then I'm sure lots of people will find you at the cons. Thank you so much for coming and letting me like dig in to some specificities. It's nice to be able to pull back the curtain. Really.
Yeah. I love talking acting things. Like I don't get it often in interviews, and the process is so interesting and it's so specific and personal for every actor. So yeah, I had a good time.
You're great.